Thank you for relaying that.
Sure.
Good evening, everybody. We can start it at 5.
All right, here we go.
All right, good evening, everybody. As I'm sure you are aware, we are recording these meetings as well as streaming them live on YouTube. The chat has been disabled in order to kind of preserve the public meetings rules. And we'll be using the raise hand function in order to talk to one another to try to limit some crosstalk. Jimmy?
All righty.
Michelle?
Good evening, everyone in our group, as well as any public members that are watching the proceedings this evening. My name is Jimmy Brown. I'd like to welcome all of you to our Public Safety Advisory Board meeting number 10. First, I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is 5:00 p.m. on Monday, May 10th. And as we start, I would like to conduct what has become part of our process, a centering exercise. First, I'm going to read a statement about the exercise and then ask all of you to join me in a breathing exercise to help bring our focus and thoughtfulness and attention to the conversations of the evening. Today, we convene to listen and learn from each other through reflection and discussion. As we reevaluate and improve our public safety practices, we elevate the voices and experiences of the communities who have been and continue to be disproportionately impacted by inequitable systems. We thank all of those who have advocated and worked on dismantling injustices in Tigard and our broader community. We build off their efforts to create more equitable and just outcomes for people of all backgrounds and ability. I would like to, before we move forward into the exercise and just giving a little bit more explanation about the purpose of our meeting, I would like to do a roll call. If Kim, can you assist us in that process?
Yes, I can. Commander McDonald?
Here.
Officer Nunn?
Here.
Shelby Rahala?
Here.
Michael O'Brien?
Here.
Abdi Rahim Muhammad?
Here.
Emilio Calderon will not be joining us this evening. Liz Newton?
Here.
John Trin? I don't see John. Jimmy Brown?
Here.
Lee Landers? I think is running a little late. Patty Lofgren?
Here.
Justin Lowe?
Here.
Danny Rauda?
Here.
Valerie Sasaki?
Here.
Sean Stoldryer?
Here.
And Jeff Mott?
Here.
Thank you. And I want to let everybody know that John Gearhart has withdrawn from the board. And so staff is deciding the best method to move forward with filling that alternate seat.
Hi, Kim. This is John Trin. I'm present. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you. All right. The purpose of our meeting is to develop our understanding of current public safety structure, practices, and procedures, to identify and eliminate institutional racism within Tigard's public institutions by centering equity and racial justice. We will bring forward the concerns and experiences of ourselves and our community, bring recommendations to city leadership to improve the lived experience of all people in Tigard. Now I'm going to begin our breathing exercise, and please feel free to turn off your cameras for this portion. Close your eyes or gaze softly downward. Feel the chair under your legs. Breathe in deeply through your nose and out your mouth. Feel your hands in your lap. Breathe in deeply through your nose and out your mouth. Feel your feet on the ground. Breathe in deeply through your nose and out of your mouth. Slowly open your eyes and begin to breathe normally. Thank you all for participating and creating this space with me. And let's jump into our meeting. Kim, if you would like to go forward with the agenda.
Yes, I believe it is public comments.
Okay. So as part of this public meeting and all public meetings, we look forward to public comment from those who are watching our meetings or those who have heard about the Public Safety Advisory Board. And so we ask for those folks to provide us sign up for any written testimony or any spoken testimony. So do we have anyone that is interested in speaking to the group tonight?
No written comments were submitted or requests to speak tonight.
Okay, thank you, Eduardo. With no one providing any additional opportunities to speak or having provided us any written material, I would like to let the public know that if they are interested in providing either written testimony or speaking opportunities, to please email our staff at eduardo@tigard-oregon.gov. And since there are no written comments as well, then we shall proceed forward with our agenda. Chief, welcome back, and you're up.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. First, I just want to check in, and hopefully you found this to be an effective way to communicate. When the district attorney made their decision and sent a media notification that he is asking the Attorney General to come and assist him in reviewing our officer-involved shooting, we made the decision to communicate with the Public Safety Advisory Board, really just advising you of the DA's decision, looking at the new law under House Bill 4301, and then asking the Attorney General to come in and assist with that review of the incident. So hopefully you all, with a shake of a head, that was an effective way to communicate, make it more timely, not wait until we had this meeting. Because if that worked well, we hopefully, should we need to communicate like that and be timely, we'll continue as such. And I don't have really anything else to expand on that because again, this is an active investigation. It's being reviewed. The DA will be working with the Attorney General. And so I don't have any other information. We don't have a timeline. I think this is new to us in Washington County in this decision. So I don't have a playbook to say how it'll take however long it takes to review the entire investigation. And then we'll kind of go from there. The other thing I wanted to share with you is this weekend, if you're not familiar with Tigard Gold, that is a program of developing leadership, in particular with our BIPOC community. I think there's around 10 or 12 individuals who are learning about Tigard city government. So it was my turn. I had an opportunity to present to them the police department, some of our functions, but also we did talk quite a bit at length about things we've done since George Floyd, what was in place, things we are still moving on. I talked quite a bit about the Public Safety Advisory Board and just told them that, the role that all of you play. And so should there be questions down the road and for whatever reason may not feel comfortable asking me, that there's always this route of the Public Safety Advisory Board to ask questions or to reach out. So I did provide that. It was a great conversation. They had some good questions and I received nothing but positive feedback from the presentation, other than I think they wanted it to be longer. I had an hour, and I think the desire was to maybe have it longer in the future. So that is my update for all of you as we speak. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions? Chief?
I don't see any hands.
Okay. I have a quick question then, Chief. So the process that the DA is utilizing to forward information for additional eyes or additional investigation to the AG's office, is that a new process? Is this something that they will do on similar kinds of situations or other kinds of situations where Washington County DA is involved in investigations?
Well, I want to be very careful not to represent the DA and or misspeak on his behalf. But I think, again, that House Bill 4301 was new law, and our officer involved shooting came in effect January 1. Our shooting was January 6. And so with the addition of reviews of use of force, interpreting the new law, he said, was challenging, and looking to the Attorney General to also review and ask for assistance. I think the wording he used was he had concerns as he applied the new law and was looking to the Attorney General for that. What I've heard is that more DAs are looking for another set of eyes, whether they all naturally flow to the Attorney General, or I think I was told that in Multnomah County they were asking a defense attorney to review there. So I think the DAs are looking at maybe different ways of just not solely doing it in themselves and looking for more of a collaborative effort. But it's so new. I think there is no, this is the way we'll do all of them. And we'll see in the future. So I don't know if it's on an individual by individual basis, or if they'll come through this with, this is a new formula and we like this process. And that could be the new playbook in the future. So again, it's totally in the district attorney's hands, and he's kind of communicating as he can on this process. So I think after this review, he may have an opinion on what this process looked like and if he would do it again in the future. But again, definitely don't want to speak for him.
Thank you, Chief. And Justin has a question.
Hi, thank you, Chief. My quick question was, do you happen to have the capacity to give a maybe brief high-level explanation of what this new House bill is, since he said that it's created this new process, or just even explaining what that new process is in a little bit finer detail?
Well, again, anything that I say or mischaracterize, I'm cautious, not because I'm uncomfortable. It's just new, and I really want to be respectful to the DA and his decision-making process and what he's looking at. He has seen the investigation. He just expressed concerns and wanting the district attorney, the Attorney General, to help him. As he reads the law, it's fairly thick in his interpretation. So I don't know where the nuances are, other than he said it causes him concerns how he applies the new law. And again, that'll be attorneys to be able to explain that. And so I don't know, Shelby, I hate to put you on the hot seat, but if there's anything else you can help me articulate when it comes to this, I'm phoning a friend and calling in my lifeline.
Certainly. So we can send out a link. It's House Bill 4301. We can send out a link to the board. I guess that would probably be easier than a summary, is just to read the language itself. There's a couple different sections of the bill, but actually the section dealing with use of force is actually pretty small and readable. So we can add that. I'll have Eduardo send that out to the board.
Thank you. Chief, I think, at least, and this is just from my read, I don't know what others think, but my initial sense was based on the word concerns, and that elicited a different kind of thought process for me relative to this whole piece. If the issue is there are concerns within the nuances of the House bill, and that's what DA meant by concerns, then possibly a better explanation of that in his letter would have soothed my thoughts about it. Because my read was, there are concerns about the investigation, not that there are concerns with how the House bill impacts the DA's handling of such cases. So it may just very well be a clarification of words, unless I'm totally off and the DA did have concerns about this.
Yeah, and that's a fair, read, is which way do I take this on his concerns. And I think it's both with the law as it's written, and then how he's applying this incident to the new law. And so the concerns are going to be in both areas, with the law as it's written, and then with the circumstances of this incident, because they're looking at the totality of the circumstances, I believe is the word that he used, that's in the law. And so that means, cradle to grave, start to finish. And so I don't know what that means. And, hopefully we'll find out soon. And
Valerie, sorry, Chief. Valerie, I think you had a response to Jimmy's comment.
I did, actually. So, Jimmy, I think the point that you're raising is really important. But I don't know that it's necessarily fair of us to ask the chief to weigh in on what the district attorney might be thinking, if he's thinking at this time. But the House Bill 4301 dealt specifically, and I pulled up the staff measure summary that's available on OLIS, which I encourage all of you to take a look at, because it's much more plain language about what the bill deals with. But it deals specifically with the use of force in situations where the peace officer feels that they're in danger, right? Which, I think there was some suggestion, at least initially in the reports that I saw and just in the news, that was the case here. So, so it makes sense to me that where we don't have any interpretation of what that means in Oregon law, or where it's a new law that had just gone into effect, that they'd want the AG to weigh in. I mean, I personally, when I saw the email that had gone out saying that this has been referred, I thought, oh good, there's going to be another set of eyes just looking at this and just making sure that process is respected, and that we have as impartial a perspective on this as possible. So I would like us to revisit this, and perhaps dedicate some more time to it once the AG's had a chance to comment and review on it. Because I do think that 4301 and also some of those bills that passed earlier this session are going to inform where we're going with this work group. So that would be my only thought on that, is that I felt better seeing the referral, just because I thought it's a changing environment, and the AG is getting situations from across the state. So we're not just making a decision in isolation with respect to what our small town is doing here. So I felt better about that. But I too share your concern. I would like to revisit this.
Thank you, Valerie, and we will make time for that when we have more information for sure. Lee, you had your hand up earlier. I wanted to make sure that if you had a question for the chief, it got asked.
Well, this doesn't necessarily have to do with what everybody's talking about, but I heard, because I pay attention to the newspaper and I'm on the scanner, I hear it all. But my question was, do you know anything about that body that was found not too long ago? I think it was on 72nd, and they ruled it a homicide. Is there any more information that you have on if you caught somebody, or you thinking about somebody, or how's that situation going?
No, I'm not familiar with which one you're talking about. How long ago was that, Lee? You know?
Well,
Hey, Chief, he's probably talking about Friday's incident.
yeah.
Oh. Oh, what? No, and we just did a press release. Thank you, Nick, for that. No, and a press release just came updated, just identifying who it was, and that it's an ongoing investigation, and there is no threat to the public regarding this incident. It happened in an isolated capacity. But yeah, if that's the one you're talking about, Lee, yes. In fact, news media just went out updating that information.
Thank you, Chief. And
yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. We've got a question from Sean.
Thank you. I just want to comment on the release that went out about the investigation being referred to the State Justice Department. Well, I read that and I just took that as part of the process. I'd heard of this House bill and I haven't read it. I don't quite understand it, but my take was this was just part of the process for Washington County to do its due diligence. So when it published a finding, a final outcome, that all the due diligence has been done and there's been a second set of eyes or multiple sets of eyes in going up to the state to look at this. It certainly didn't seem like closure, and I'm sure it'll get revisited at some point by the city and the police department.
Thank you, Sean. It sounds like you and Valerie definitely had the same interpretation. Avi, do you have a question for the chief?
So I've been gone for a period of time. I just want to say hi, everybody. Just haven't seen you in a while. The question I had is specifically about the officer. I don't know is this officer still technically on duty? Like, is it still an on-duty officer? Is he on like paid leave? Like, I really didn't. I don't know. So I was asking.
Yeah, that's a great question, Abdi. No, and again, I think it's been covered by the media, but this officer was actively pursuing, working for a different agency long before this incident happened, and made the decision when he got the offer to go ahead after this incident to move to that department. So he left in mid-April to pursue other employment. And so we still have our responsibility to look at this even internally on the whole process, because there were, a sergeant and 5 other officers there. So despite whether that officer is still under our authority, we'll still review this once it comes into our purview to start looking at this.
And Abdi, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, this is a quick follow-up. So the officer, let's say the officer moves to a completely different department. So then that department decides what they do with the officer while the investigation is going on. So he could still be on duty or he could be on that paid time leave, but it depends on that department, correct?
Yeah, so there's a few things that made this just a little more challenging. I think the other agency has gone on record with the media saying, we thought that the investigation was complete by the DA's office, so they hired him under the belief that it was done, and obviously we know that that's not the case. And then for me, I have the discretion to bring the officer back, and I did so once he's cleared, the protocols that are outlined in Senate Bill 111. And so because he was on critical leave. So it's not administrative leave like he did something wrong. It's critical leave. And he did all the steps that are outlined in both our policy and in Senate Bill 111. And still waited a few weeks. And then again, I was, the information that I had, I believe that, it was good to bring him back, and I did so. And then within 2 weeks, he gave, the notice to leave and go to the other agency. And I know that now with, especially under where the DA is asked for the Attorney General to look at this, it has the appearance that there are concerns, and why would I bring him back? And that is probably the most frequent question I get is, why did you bring it back? And all I can tell you is the dynamics are changing rapidly, and what historically we've done may not be what we will do today and tomorrow. And had I known that there were concerns, I would have brought him in more of an administrative role until we heard from the DA. So I own that decision, and kind of that's where we're at with that.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions for the Chief's update? Great. Jimmy, I see no hands.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, folks. And thank you, Chief, for your update. Some good questions, and obviously are some pieces that we can do some follow-up on. This does kind of spark me in terms of, perhaps one thing that staff could do for the board members is to maybe put together some type of links or something that would take us to various public safety activity that has occurred at the legislature. That might be just good reading material for us to have. Because again, like most of you, I have not read House Bill 4301, but I know that if we inform ourselves, it certainly will help us going forward as to what is happening at the statewide level. Our next part of the agenda is to discuss the current successes and future opportunities for the police officer hiring. And so I will turn it over to the department representative. Is that you, Commander?
No, you're turning it over to me.
Oh, my bad. Kim.
Thank you. Thanks. So we've spent the last two meetings, so the last month together, talking about police hiring. We've heard from Brandy Leos, we've heard from Sergeant Erickson, we've heard from Commander McDonald, and tonight is the night where we talk about what we've heard, things that we think the police department is doing well, and not just doing well, but is living out the values of the police department and is living out what the community expects of the police department in hiring, and then opportunities that this group sees for improving that hiring process. So Tammy, if you could share your screen. And so I'd like to start with a discussion around things that we've heard in the last month that we found to be successes, things that the police department in Tigard is doing really well. And I am having a little slight issue. There we go. So I'll just look for hands. Valerie.
Before we do this agenda item, I think I'm a little concerned about the sort of linear nature of this process. And I do think it's useful that, we revisit and summarize what we've talked about. However, I've been very impressed by what I've heard from the Tigard Police Department representatives. But we haven't had an opportunity to hear a lot of contrary suggestions. So, we've talked to people within our own communities. I know that there's been a lot of discussions happening offline here, but, to the extent that we're being asked to make recommendations, I don't know that we're prepared to do that at this point. I know that I'm prepared to do that at this point. I think that clearly certain steps have been taken, and I was really impressed to hear what Brandy had talked about before about, you know, making sure that there were racial equity questions involved in the public panels, for example. But, you know, as far as whether there are additional best practices that could be adopted and, you know, should be adopted, I don't know that we have the information to address that at this point. You know, so I think that first screen, the successes that we have seen, and the things that we think that the department is doing great, I think we can talk to that, because I think that there are obviously a lot of thought has gone into what the processes look like and ways to, you know, make sure that they address concerns. But I am concerned that, you know, we are not, I think that we are not prepared to take that next step. So that is my concern. I just wanted to make sure that I raised it before we sort of dive into the larger questions.
Any other comments on Valerie's concern? Yes, Justin?
Thank you, Valerie, for raising those points, because I know that's something that's popped up in my head too, while very appreciative of learning about Tigard PD and also all the various things that they have done to improve their practices in public safety. One of the things that came to mind with that statement that Valerie just made is when I'm observing committees in the legislature, where I get to hear from two sides of a policy issue or recommendation. And I think that in light of what Valerie just said, having had such, I think she characterized it as linear education on the Tigard Police Department, I am at least curious in the concept of possibly bringing in other organizations that maybe do mental health response, or maybe like John Trin's organization, or groups and organizations that are doing other forms of response, such as like Portland Street Response, I believe, and Cahoots, those organizations that also provide another perspective. That's just my take on what Valerie had just mentioned.
Thank you, Justin. And just to put out kind of as the other side of this coin is that this committee was really, or this board was really brought together to come to this group with the perspectives of the communities you represent, and then the outreach that you do in those communities, and then independent research. There is that expectation of 5 to 15 hours of independent work that the board members do is, and this wasn't intended as kind of a blue ribbon commission or legislative session. So the idea of having kind of that both perspectives was supposed to be brought in by this group, whereas and then the police department bringing in their perspective. Like that was where the intent is, to create that dichotomy of voices and to create kind of the both sides. Jimmy, I see your hand.
Thank you. So with that in mind, if, as Valerie said, we've had almost a linear approach to looking at the department and the hiring processes, et cetera, it sounds as though you're saying if we wanted to have additional discussion, input, other eyes to look at what it is that we are doing, that we as a board could either do that on our own time as part of our hours that we have agreed to put in for, you know, reviewing information, et cetera. We could say we want to talk to Portland Street Response and do that on our own, or could we invite them to come in and participate and give us their read on the handling of certain types of situations by police officers? And then additionally, since we are talking about public safety in the main, we would be able to bring someone who would, or some some groups who might be able to talk to us about reframing the entire discussion about public safety.
Yes, I think we've tried to encourage multiple on-ramps for public involvement in this board through your outreach, through our public through the public comment period. And so yes, Jimmy, all of those as on-ramps to bringing in alternate perspectives. And Patty, I see your hand.
Yeah, I had one comment, and then based on some of the other things that have been said, I have another thought. It seems like we're talking about two different things right now. One is the police officer hiring that happens here, and the other is the larger umbrella of the voices we're bringing to this meeting. And I have a great deal of respect for both of those inputs. I do think that there's lots of opportunities. Some of us have been chatting just about different voices we could bring that would help us have a bigger picture. I had a similar response to Valerie's when Tammy shared her screen. My first thought was, I'm not sure I have anything to say yet. I'm not sure I have something specific. I participated in the oral interview board, and I can speak specifically to the positives in that experience. I feel like I know enough about that. But in terms of some of these other things, I've read these documents. Sounds good to me, but I don't know what I don't know. And so when the screen went up, I thought, I'm not sure what I'm going to say at this point in time. So I'm not sure what I'm asking to know. I'm just asking to know something more in order to have some kind of constructive feedback.
Thank you, Patty. And Justin, I see your hand.
Thank you. I appreciate what you've mentioned about the purpose of this board, and also the additional work on our end that we're supposed to be doing as community representatives that did a community caucus, and then we're also selected by the Tigard City Council to represent those groups, and the responsibilities that were entailed with that. I think one of the things that I'm processing through right now is that we're being asked to do two things as community representatives based off of the explanation of the charge that you said about that created this board in the first place. One of which is to be a representative of the various groups in the community that we are a part of. So going to them, asking them for feedback, bringing them to the board, also voicing their concerns they have about public safety and providing that in this space to be complementary with the education from the Tigard Police Department. But then the other part of it that you touched on is then bringing in, I guess, that outside knowledge, which I feel like we have done in terms of our work experiences and extracurricular involvements outside of work. I think where I'm finding myself at an impasse, especially when it comes to talking about future opportunities, is I still feel like there's something missing. And I don't know if that's because of the structure of how our meetings have gone, or just the structure of how we've been fulfilling our roles of community representatives. But I feel like there's more to be had. And to jump onto what Valerie and Patty mentioned, like I still feel like there could be more before I can make an informed recommendation on future opportunities for both hiring, and then I know we're going to get into body camera policy later. And so that's just my response to that. Even though I know that we are not a legislative body and we're not having two sides presented, I know that that wasn't the original intent. However, I know that that resource would, especially since we are putting in our time and hours in terms of engaging with our community members.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. And Sean, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. So as I have been paying attention to the policy discussions about the hiring and also watching the news, I also don't think we're at a place to make any recommendation, because I think, yes, this board, it does represent the community, and there's a lot of people in the community that think the Tigard Police Department is doing a great job. And yes, we could set up a perpetual oversight, HR oversight, function with some private company that comes in. But yet I can't see anything that was presented or anything I've seen in the news that tells me that there's anything systematically wrong with Tigard's HR policies or their hiring practices. I mean, if we're truly going to talk about public safety, we could talk about the 25,000 plus calls for service from the community asking for police help. That's a nonstop job for our police officers in this community. We could talk about what's happening in our education system, in our elementary schools and middle schools. A next step would be.
So Sean, just to clarify, your perspective is that you don't see any opportunities for improvement in Tigard's police hiring, but you do see opportunities in some of the other topic areas we're planning to discuss.
Sure. Yes, thank you. And for example, and I'll wrap this up, 2 years ago before the pandemic hit, there was a legislative initiative to track the classroom room clears to mandate that statewide. Now they ran out of time because of other things happening politically, and then the pandemic hit. And I don't think that topic's ever been revisited. But if we really want to talk about public safety, if we really want to talk about the incident with the tragic death, there are root cause issues there that go back 25 years. And so if we're really going to dig into this and ask questions, it can't be about what happened that night, because there is so much more to this with systemic issues and root cause issues. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will certainly be diving into those as we go forward. Lee, I see your hand.
Thank you. I think that we're going to get a lot of more information once this COVID decides to subside, and we can sit our butts in the cars with the officers and go on runs with them. I don't know about everybody else on the board, but I've been on lots of ride-alongs. I've conversed. I used to do towing. I used to do the DUIs. I used to meet with the officers all the time, all that stuff. Every aspect of what I've seen is awesome. You have to go back to before all this happened. Look at the track record for the Tigard Police Department. Okay, then nothing has happened. A very low percentage of stuff like that goes on. And then when it happens, all of a sudden, oh no, what are they doing wrong? What are they doing wrong? They're not. And the part about the 25,000 calls, well, first you need money to hire officers. I understand that. Every time I drive past the police department, I see a multitude of cruisers in that parking lot at any given shift. Okay, I understand that we need more officers, but let's look at reality here. Okay, they can only do.
I think that point has come up before with the need for more officers.
But it is what it is. They respond how they respond. They respond as fast as they can. That's what it is. You can't really do anything about it. But the explanation on making decisions on what our recommendations are and everything else, being told on how these policies are and everything else does not beat you putting your eyes on the situation and seeing it front face on what goes on.
Okay, so it sounds like you have a different perspective than I think what Valerie and Justin had raised, which is having the alternate perspective. You think it's more that you need more education on the police perspective.
Yep.
Thank you. And Chief, I see your hand.
Sorry, I know there was a few other people that were actually ahead of me, but if I might at least understand what I believe the council was trying to achieve. And Councilor Newton, I hope not to speak for you, but So part of this is we believe we have things in place. And so with an equity lens, and I know some of you are not trained in formal equity lens, but when we present certain segments of the policing, that if there's some things that jump out, because again, the national narrative of policing is certain issues are not happening across the country, whether the departments don't reflect the community they serve. So then how are you onboarding? What are you doing to be more inclusive? And so if we share with you the things that we have in place and that we've made an intentional effort towards that, hopefully we're farther than some organizations, and you can feel that way, and that we've made an intentional effort to talk about cultural competency, in the levy hires, the 9 that we've hired are very, very diverse. So things of that nature that actually during the course of this is hoping that you have more confidence than that we have a broken system. But if there are other things that just from your own lived experience or things that you've heard that you think we should consider, that's what we would hear about. When we get into mental health response or some of those, I think it will be appropriate to hear alternatives. And that's when you would get either a presentation to Cahoots or the mental health response team. So I think there will be opportunities to see alternative methods on certain categories, depending on when we get to those sections. But just from the hiring part of this, and again, who you on board. So if you've gotten a snapshot of how we do it and the methodology and the inclusiveness that we work with HR, hopefully, that gives you confidence, and maybe down the road you'll have more to add. But there'll be times where I hope we have wins where it's not, you don't feel that it's totally broken and have to revamp, and that more than anything, you have a raised level of confidence that what we're doing kind of fits with the national expectation of what they want police departments to do.
Thank you, Chief. And Liz, did you have a perspective on the council?
Yeah, I just want to keep this at a really high summary level to sort of reiterate what the chief was talking about. I appreciate this conversation. I think what the council was looking at was 2 things. Number one, do the members of our police services, our officers, reflect our community or the diversity in our community, and what can we do to ensure that? And secondly, and equally as important for me, is the community comfortable? The public safety services we're providing, is that what the service that the community is wanting at all levels? So is everybody in our community comfortable with how public safety is being delivered here? And I just want to say one thing that was interesting. I'm involved in the Northwest Women Leadership Academy, and that really quickly, that's a group that is trying to educate and equip younger women for careers in public service. And we had someone present, I'm trying to get her name, that's why I keep looking at my phone, present on hiring and DEI. And one of the things that was interesting to me was how you reach out to diverse populations. And for me, what I'm struck with is what I don't know. And it was really eye-opening to me to hear that some of the social media tools that people think are effective, some of the things that are sort of common, aren't really effective for that group. And I thought, well, how would I know that unless I'd heard from this individual? So I'm appreciating the nuances of what we're talking about here, because even though I think our department has done a lot, we were on the road before the George Floyd murder, and we've done more. I still think there might be some things that me in particular in my demographic, no, I don't know, that could be more effective to attracting some more diverse candidates. And so that's the one thing that, as the discussion started, I was thinking about how we approach something like that. And the rest of you wondering how we bring what we're calling alternative views to the table, maybe thinking about things along that line. I guess I would say I feel like our hiring practices are pretty solid, but we need to get those candidates in the door. So I think there's some nuances around that kind of thing that might be helpful. And so I'll just leave it at that. Again, we want to recruit diverse candidates and have our officers reflect our community, and we want the services that we provide to be in keeping with the values of our community, everyone in our community.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz, for that kind of blind spot, what we're looking for these opportunities. If you wouldn't mind, if you do find that name, I'm sure forwarding that to us and we can include that. Thank you. And Valerie, you've been very patient.
No, and my comment really gets to what a lot of what Liz just said. You know, I think the what our role is here, I think, is what we're talking about, and what council's expectation is of what comes out of this. You know, so our role to validate existing practice such that, you know, what the department is doing and the steps the department is taking are positive, which I think they are. And I think that a lot has been done in the Tigard Police Department that hasn't been done in other departments that I think is very positive as far as addressing DEI issues. And so, you know, that validation component, though, is only part of it. And so what we're being asked to do is we're being asked to make recommendations. And I agree, we're not a blue ribbon commission here, right? We don't have PhDs in diversity hiring. But I do think that there's some additional inquiry that would make revisiting this as we go through the process useful. And I don't, you know, beyond what Liz said, and I think that, you know, the HR folks highlighted this when we talked with them, that, you know, it is difficult to determine how to reach out to diverse communities. And we know how we reach out to our communities, right? And so I think some of those issues have come up. I think Danny had some good suggestions, particularly about that. But, you know, I think that the hearing from people who are experts in this area, you know, will allow us to make more informed discussion, more informed recommendations. So, you know, I think today, for purposes of our agenda item today, I think it's reasonable that we would validate and would say, these are the things the department is doing well. But as far as that secondary component, like I said, I'm not comfortable and I'm not there yet.
And I think maybe we're looking at this at different levels of granularity, because I think the suggestion that you just made, which is that the police department can become more diverse and can target certain groups, that would be the level of granularity we're looking for as a recommendation opportunity for the police department, that this is a gap that you're missing. You acknowledged it in some of the HR presentation. So you consider hiring a consultant to improve DEI hiring or make this a focus in the next year.
Yeah, but I don't know necessarily that hiring consultants always the answer, right?
No, just an option that exists.
Because there are a lot of consultants out there for a lot of different things. I mean, you and I both know that.
I'm more suggesting that the granularity doesn't need to be, oh, go to this conference to recruit this demographic. Maybe it's a task back to the department of research this, look into this. This is a gap that we've identified that we would like you to improve upon.
Okay.
Jeff, I see your hand.
Thanks. I think what some of us at a high level are bristling at a little bit is what seemed like resistance to being able to bring in outside groups that might have a differing point of view or more a broader point of view. Because I mean, I appreciate the members of this board, you know, 5 to 15 hours a week doing our own research, but like Liz said, you know, there's things that all of us don't know and that can learn more. We're not a blue ribbon committee, but the end charge of this Public Safety Advisory Board is to make Tigard more equitable for everyone. And so with that end goal in mind, sometimes it will be important to bring in experts that aren't part of this board or part of the police department or part of Tigard City, the city of Tigard. Because in the end, also, like, this is a 12-member or wherever we're at voting board. So if we can bring in more information to help educate everyone that is voting here, that should be seen as a positive. But I also do appreciate Chief's comments, and we do realize, or I do realize, that the department is working on DE&I with the competency questions, you know, with the end goal of, or the high level goal of having the makeup of the force reflect the community. Those are important things. But like two things I think are important is we should be able to invite groups to come speak as appropriate. And I think to the other side of this question, we should be able to revisit topics and make recommendations later as we learn more, or as something we do down the line affects something we did earlier. So those are the two things I think are important.
Excellent. And I know we are planning on bringing in a member from the mental health response team when we talk about mental health response. And please feel free to invite opposing opinions that you know in the community, that groups that you are aware of, to public comment, send us their information. Because if there's a perspective that you would like to share with this group, please share it with this group. And then as far as revisiting other comments, there's nothing that says in the charter or anywhere else that when we go into school resource officers, you don't make a point in the school resource officer recommendations about hiring for school resource officers. These are, I think we all at this point can fairly acknowledge that this is a web of policies, not standalone silos. So these things are interconnected, and we can always go back and revisit, or as we learn more going through this process, continuing to talk to each other and add things that we learn along the way. And Abdi, I see your hand.
One thing I wanted to talk about, and I feel like this oftentimes happens when people are trying to, you know, change the system or make a system better. Not every time someone wants change are they saying that the current system is bad. You know, the Tigard Police Department could be great at specific aspects, right? But the point is, we're not just shooting for great; we're shooting for perfect. Like, we don't settle for just great. I just wanted to, like, we can make specific policies easier in some places and harder in others. And we also need to understand our position is, like, for example, I'm the president of Black Student Union, but I don't speak for all Black students, you know, and like, you are probably a delegate from some community or some aspect of lived experience that you've had, but you don't speak for every single person who've had that lived experience. But the point I'm just trying to get at is that, like, if we want change, you know, just to bring up the topic, oh, we want to speak to outside groups, that change isn't because the system right now is bad. You know, the change is trying to make the system more efficient, you know, easier, more transparent, and better for our whole community as a whole.
Thank you, Abdi. And Sean, I see your hand.
Yeah, I really thought Liz's comments were actually really hit the mark about how do you reach, and this to me was probably the one piece I don't think we could solve. I don't think we heard an answer, but how do you reach the diverse community? You know, if you want to reach this diverse community, I would say you look at our high school, because you know, Tigard High School is a very diverse community. But I don't know what kind of recruitment tools the police department would use in a high school. I would say in my industry, I am aware that we are manufacturers and companies across the country that are hiring for essential service positions are really having a hard time finding people that want to do those jobs. And I don't know the answer to that. But this is a national issue. How do you reach everybody to fill your essential positions? It seems to me that our high schools present a golden opportunity. And to do that, we need to have a level of trust in the community. And, you know, we need to understand the police department is a valuable part of our community. We're all a community together, and you know, keep those lines of communication open.
Yep. Thank you, Sean. And I think what I'm hearing out of kind of two different conversations that we're having simultaneously is, one, the purpose of the board, the type of recommendations that City Council envisioned and the city staff had envisioned when pulling everybody together, and like the granularity thereof. And I've heard resoundingly a recommendation for more, that while the police department is doing a fine job at hiring diversely, there needs to be more emphasis on that. No specific granular suggestions on exactly the methods, but that focus is applaudable right now and needs to be increased with time. The second half of the conversation that we're still having is what type of education is required for this group to feel comfortable making decisions. So I'd like to continue with that conversation as well as we continue. So Jimmy, I see your hand.
Good conversation. You know, I think we end up in a somewhat awkward position in the sense that, you know, to discuss current successes, I have to ask the question to the department, do you feel that you have not been successful? Because I don't know what success looks like in your department. Last week, we were able to look at some of the numbers and we saw some of the faces of people that have been hired. I don't know if that's successful based on Jimmy Brown's perception. I could have seen a few more African Americans in there and said, now that's success. I didn't see that. I saw some people of color. I could say that's successful. So I would ask the department, do you feel that you're being successful? And if you feel that you are being successful, what can you do? What do you think you have to do to improve upon your success? Because then that helps me to go forward thinking, okay, so how else would I define success? I might say, to be successful, continue to bring on non-police officers, members of the community, to participate in your hiring patterns. That to me might help bring forward additional success activity inside the department. I might say, as part of being successful in the department, that in your interviews, you bring forward real life discussions with those who want to be Tigard police officers. For example, I might ask questions that would elicit a response to certain types of shootings that have occurred on a national level, certain types of issues around family disturbances and domestic violence. What is your perception, your focus, your connection to equity, and what does that mean to you? And what should it mean to a department? That might help me to bring forward ideas about the success of the hiring process at the department. And from a policy perspective, I would want to know, which I haven't heard yet, how much do you spend on recruitment? How much do you spend on connecting to non-traditional organizations? And I don't place a value on non-traditional organizations. I mean, those organizations that aren't necessarily always in the hiring pipeline. I used to have a saying back when I was doing my probation parole work and my work with gang members throughout the community. And I would ask the questions, how often do you go into the barbershops to find out what's happening in the community? Because if you want to know what's happening in the communities, go to places that community people hang out. How much activity do you have with the churches? How much activity do you have with HBCUs, historic Black colleges and universities? If you want to see additional diversity, are you willing to put resources that say, if you come to Tigard, Oregon, with its population of 85% majority community, we will provide you resources to help you purchase property here so you can become a member of our community as well as a police officer. Because we know that there are other entities out there who are doing that to improve their way to connect across cultural lines or ethnic and racial lines. So, again, I know I'm a little bit long-winded about this, but to define current successes, to talk about current successes, yes, I can say, based on the information that I've seen, the department looks like it's being successful. But that's just based on what I see, given what you've given me to look at. And then I would ask, well, how do you feel about your success? Do you think you're being successful? Do you feel like you have met whatever your metrics are relative to hiring new police officers? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. And Valerie, 1 second before I call on you, we have a couple members we haven't heard from tonight. Would any of you three like to speak? Okay, no. Valerie, go ahead.
No, it's always good to create space. So thank you for that, Kim. And Jimmy, I just want to say that I am in awe of you. I remain in awe of you because you just articulated so clearly so many of the things that have been sort of ricocheting around in my brain with this whole discussion. I think we are looking at like the goal of the department is to create a department that's representative of the community, which is admirable. But I think what I would suggest, in addition to saying that, I would also advocate for more short, half Japanese, out of shape police officers to be more representative of my demographic. But, I think we have to look to it where our community is going and what is the trajectory of where our community is going. As far as diversity, because, Sean, you say the diversity is in the high school, and I think that there's some truth to that, but the population, as of the 2010 census, only 25% of the population was under the age of 18. So, the vast majority of Tigard residents are not in the high school. The vast majority of Tigard diversity is not in the high school. So, where are we as a community going, and how do we create a community and a police department that's representative of where we see ourselves in the future too? So, I think this is a great discussion, and I'm a little sad that I have to follow Jimmy because now I sound very inarticulate. But like I said, I think that as long as we can circle back to this, as long as we can, say, okay, what we're doing is great, but here are other things that we now realize would be valuable. I think I'd be okay with moving on from this discussion.
Yeah, I don't see any other hands. Thank you, everybody, for this discussion. I think, Danny, please.
Just wanted to say that I haven't said anything because I feel like either Valerie or Jimmy or somebody else has said exactly what I'm thinking. So it's like, what am I going to add? I think I just echo what everybody's saying in that I too didn't I was like, I don't know, everything looks perfect to this point, but I feel like whatever, like what Justin and everybody else is saying is, I don't know what I don't know, and I know Chief is very open to this, that, what I've appreciated about Tigard Police is that, they are open to even being even better, and so I just appreciate that kind of openness, that like, I love how Abdi put it, like we're not shooting for great, we're shooting for perfect. And that's totally resonated with me, because when we have these conversations of change, we have to think like everything is just crap, but it's not. I mean, based on what we heard from the presentations over these last month or two, you all are doing a pretty good job, but of course, okay, we still need to do a little bit more digging. Like there's got to be something there. We can all acknowledge that we're not perfect yet, so like what's there? So that's the only thing I would add.
Yeah, thank you for chiming in, Danny. And I think we're still looking for all of the ways that we can together make the Tigard Police Department perfect. And something I really appreciate about this conversation that we just had is this board was created with the purpose of co-creation. We're all coming together and deciding how the board functions, how recommendations come together, and continuing to have this conversation about what the board needs in order to be successful and what is required of all of us in the room. I think is only going to make this a better experience for everybody.
I'll just add one more thing if I can. See, you asked my voice. Now you're not going to shut me up. I think for me, like when I was hearing, the reminder that we are supposed to do our due diligence to hear from the communities that we have connections to, so we can bring that alternative perspective to these meetings. And I work for a very diverse Catholic church in the community that's got, white, Hispanic, Vietnamese, Pacific Islander, all over the place, right? But I haven't had the most success, mainly probably because of the pandemic. I mean, I started this job when the pandemic started, and so we have a 10,000 member community, and I probably know 1% of that community, if that, right? Because everything's been done by Zoom, and the traditional channels to build connections haven't been there. So I don't know, like I feel like I need a little bit of extra support to figure out how do we solicit feedback from the community. Because I know we've gotten those talking points and I've used those. I don't know. I haven't had the most success to be like, hey, I have something to say about public safety in Tigard, like positive or negative. So there's that.
That's a really good point. Has anyone had some good success soliciting input from the community and like to share a strategy that might have worked for them? Justin.
I mean, I'd actually like to reinforce Danny's comment, just because I have had success with individual conversations, and those have been with more close and personal connections within the community groups that I'm a part of, but have not been as successful with trying to create dialogue within actual groups. And that's been primarily, I think, because of the reasons that Danny mentioned, having a more difficult time to continue in-depth conversations over the virtual space and build that trust and guidance. Also because, to be able to have those conversations is one thing to do it in person in a pre-pandemic place versus over Zoom. And on top of that, I think Zoom fatigue is a real thing, as we all feel. And I think that that's played a role too, in terms of, okay, after working a 9 to 5, hey, let's have a discussion about something that could be difficult to talk about, emotional, maybe re-traumatizing even in some aspects. And so I think there are some barriers there just because of the nature of the pandemic and what we are currently in. So that's what I wanted to chip in with that. But I have found that individual conversations have been going well regarding this.
Thank you, Justin. And Abdi, I see your hand.
Talking about the aspect of trying to reach out to the community, I've had a little, I would say, a long record of trying to do this the best way that I can. And some tips are just like, so one thing that you have to sneak it into something that's a lot larger, right? So for example, like let's say our high school is doing graduation form, right? And everyone's gonna have to fill out the graduation form because if you're graduating, you have to fill it out. But what you do is you sneak another form in with that graduation form. So let's say the city of Tigard was trying to see what roads are damaged in our areas that you want fixed, right? Everyone's gonna fill that out because everyone wants their roads to be fixed. But that's when you also sneak in another form of talking about, how is the police department doing, because it is gonna go along with the flow because they're trying to fill out this form. Another one is using our schools as an outlet place. A lot of parents, and are at our schools, and a lot of students at our schools. So like if you could just have a form that's lying next to the office when you walk in. So when they're doing their attendance, let's say they want to call their student out, hey, could you fill out this form if you wanted to? Just providing all those avenues for people, because it's difficult. It's difficult for people to do things, but you have to just find a way and finesse the best way you can.
Thank you, Abdi. And now when everyone gets a survey that has an extra question about the police force on it, they will know why. John Trin.
I just want to comment. I had some positive conversation with folks in the community with different programs I work with, mental health challenges, or folks that work with the houseless population. And so it's been really beneficial. I will take your comments or encourage them to send in some public comments. I know that in terms of just for the police department, the Tigard Police Department, a lot of positive response. There are some challenges with other law enforcement within the county. So I would encourage them to also send in some public comment in a couple of months, or a couple of weeks, I should say, as we talked about more about the behavioral health.
Yeah, and please do. I think we're going on our 3rd meeting without any public comment. So please encourage people that are in your communities to comment and add their voice. And Danny.
Yeah, this whole conversation has made me think of like, how can we be more creative about getting these public comments? Because I know almost 99%, at least for the Hispanic community, because I am Hispanic myself, so I could relate to that more. I don't ever see a member of one of my community going online, finding the website, finding the form and filling it out, right? That's just so foreign. Like, participating in the systems that way, you know. And I'm almost thinking, like, I don't even know if this would be something we could do, but like for example, when at the mass services that we have, like maybe having a little comment box, you know, and they could when they come to mass, they can fill out, hey, do you have a comment or question about public safety and Tigard? And they just literally fill it out on a piece of paper and they put it in there. And then I don't know how I would bring that information to you, but that's just something that I thought about. And then with Commander, we're doing which y'all are invited to. We're going to do a vigil on the 26th in remembrance of George Floyd. And I've asked Commander if we can come to City Hall and maybe he could say a few words about the work that we'd be doing. I think it'd be cool if we did have another member of PSAP there that could also kind of put a face to the group. But I'm also thinking of like, oh, is there an opportunity there for whoever does show up to be like, hey, if you have any feedback, fill out this physical form that's here, you know? So I don't know, just some things that are coming up for me right now.
That is a fantastic idea. If you could do that at one of your church services. Eduardo takes public comment by handwritten mail. His address is available. That is like home address, but the office address is available on the public comment website. We can make sure you get the link. And if you could collect comments in any way from your group to be included in the public comment, that would be amazing. Thank you, Danny. And Valerie.
I also wonder if it makes sense for us to have an organized presence at certain community events like the farmers market. You know, I would be willing to sit for a few hours and talk with people about these issues too. And I know that they get a pretty diverse cross section of the group shows up at those events, you know, because there's the one over by Bull Mountain and then there's the one downtown. So, you know, I love this brainstorming, and Danny, thank you for suggesting these ideas because, you know, like Justin, I've been having good success talking to people one-on-one, but not in the more general sense, which I think it would be informative.
Yeah, does anyone have connections to the farmers market and be able to take the lead?
I could reach out to Jessica.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Any other comments on public outreach and improving kind of the input that we're able to get from the community? All right, moving on. Our next topic this evening was on the current successes and future opportunities with the body cam policy. I'd like to open it up with any successes. I know the 7-page policy got sent out a little late today, but if there was any initial feedback, that'd be great. Valerie?
My feedback is I haven't had a chance to review it because we got it so late. So I would propose we defer this discussion.
Yeah. Thumbs up, folks agree? Totally fair. Thank you, Valerie, for making the suggestion. Last up on the agenda is we had talked about electing new chairs and vice chairs several weeks before they would go in. And thank you very much to Jimmy and to Abdi for being our first chair and vice chair, but we are wrapping up our first unit. Following our conversation on body cam policy successes and opportunities, we'll be moving into what the order is TBD, but it'll be mental health response from the police force and police training with use of force component. So that'll be the next unit, and we'll be looking for chair and vice chair next. But Jeff, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. This is about the body camera discussion. Could we also receive a copy of the records maintenance and release policy? Because after reading through the body camera existing policy, that is alluded to a few times, but that maintenance and release policy isn't included.
Commander? Yep, we'll get that to you, Jeff. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
But yes, moving on into the next unit, new chair and vice chair, we will be changing it up. Do I have any nominees for chair? Jimmy, are you nominating someone or are you just cheering for whoever's next?
Well, I'm cheering, that's the thing. And secondly, I am interested in nominating a party for our next chair?
Who would you like to nominate?
Ms. Valerie Sasaki.
Valerie?
I was actually going to nominate John to serve as the chair for this next unit. I think his expertise in the area would be invaluable. So, but thank you, Jamie. That's very sweet of you.
Is that like a no?
John, do you accept?
Yeah, I'm honored. Thank you, Valerie. I do. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks. And Lee, I see your hand. Do you also have a nomination?
I was gonna nominate Valerie. I guess. Yeah.
Popular.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so sweet. No, I really appreciate that. But also, I don't know if I want to go after Jimmy. That's tough shoes to fill. Jimmy and Abby did such a good job.
Thank you, Lee.
I would certainly, both those candidates are amazing. And I would have nominated Valerie, but I think for this particular topic, John is probably a very likely candidate.
Yes. I don't see any other hands for nominations. So seeing none, John, congratulations. Our next chair, the Public Safety Advisory Board.
Thank you.
And vice chair, would anyone like to nominate anybody for vice chair? Or nominate yourself? You can nominate yourself. Justin?
Would Valerie entertain a nomination for vice chair?
I would be honored to help John in any way that I can.
Would anyone else like to nominate themselves or someone else for vice chair? Lee?
Valerie, yes, ma'am. That's all I got to say. Yeah.
All right. Well, Abdi, I am sorry to say that you are relieved of duty, but we are lucky that we will have Valerie taking over. So congratulations, Valerie.
Thank you. Thank you.
So as I discussed, moving into next meeting, so in 2 weeks, it will either be, we'll continue our body cam discussion, but then we'll either be going into mental health response team or mental health response by the police force or police training. The reason that is TBD is because we are inviting a guest speaker from the mental health response team to come speak, and it's dependent on when they're available. But before we kind of end tonight's discussion, we did have requests for more information and more education. So thinking about the police training discussion in particular, is there anything that you are particularly interested in or looking for from the police training and use of force conversation? Lee, is your hand still up from before?
Sorry, I gotta lower it.
Justin.
In addition to learning about the use of force and the continuum that's involved with that from the Tigard PD side, I would be interested, if it's possible, to also include information or a workshop on also what is done in regards to de-escalation and also engaging individuals of diverse backgrounds as well, and if there are any specifics to that.
Yeah, and I think Commander gave all of us in our prep meeting a really good summary of training and how it relates to de-escalation. Commander, would you be willing to just kind of give a couple minutes on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the best way to explain it, Justin, and for all the members of the board, de-escalation is a component of every training that we do. I mean, de-escalation is really an end state. So in every part of training that we're doing, that's really what we're trying. I mean, the reality is almost every incident we go to has some elevated level of emotion or challenge to it. So just about everything that we're responding to requires some level of effort to de-escalate that situation. So as a result, our training is largely surrounding that. So whether it's a classroom session where we're doing a review of policies and different practices, or it's an actual, say, a scenario-based training that that we're providing, that's a component that goes into just about every training that we do. I shouldn't say every training, but just about every training that we do, there's a component of that in the training.
Thank you, Commander. And I'm hoping that we'll also discuss kind of how that's built in as we talk about each of the training.
Right, that's what I was hoping to get more out of, but I appreciate that brief overview. I thought we were talking about for our later discussions when we actually dive into that content, but that's exactly what I meant. Kim, you just touched on it by actually showing it hand in hand with the other information.
Yeah,
we have some extra time tonight, so.
Yeah, sorry, Kim. One of the things that we'll discuss when we bring the trainers in, when we talk about use of force training and that type of in those segments, the trainers will actually be talking about some of the specific trainings that we do. So rather than just talking about it as a broad overview, you're going to get some of the more specifics. And what our plan is to actually make some of the training scenarios that we run our officers through available to the board members. So you can actually go and see firsthand, you'll be able to participate firsthand in some of the trainings that we provide our officers. So it will be a controlled environment, a highly controlled environment for all of you, because we recognize you don't have the same baseline of training that our officers do. But nonetheless, allowing you the opportunity to see and experience some of the training that we provide our staff to help give you a little bit of a baseline for some of the things that we provide to our team when we're doing that training. And it's really use of force training is a wide variety of different things that we do. So you'll see a variety of different trainings, a variety of different platforms that we use in order to do that. And you should be able to have a little bit better grasp on what that looks like, and it should clear it up quite a bit in terms of those types of questions, when you see some of the different training components that we use.
Thank you, Commander. And Chief?
Yeah, I just want to draw your attention when we get to those points is, again, how we're evolving or staying connected with not only the community expectation, the policing narrative at large. So there are things that we've been creative, and you'll see. For example, as a police chief, what I want to see is documentation, right? So we do a course outline that says what are our objectives and what are we going over. And as Sergeant Erickson will attest to later, what I've asked him to put in is specifically to make sure that syllabus covers a de-escalation component, so we can talk about it, or a scenario, and an intervention component. So if we're not demonstrating what intervention looks like, we're talking about it. So our officers can, it's all muscle memory and ingrained, but also depending on the tool or the scenario is how does that look like in that application? And then I have it documented. So again, should I need to, I can go back to that. Now, we haven't had any hands-on training. We've been in the virtual world, and so that documentation is something in the future that we've said we want in place. So I won't have a proof, but just again, as we present, because it seems one-sided, it's geared towards whatever we want to show you, but I'm hoping that we also highlight some things that we've progressively tried to do to change, given kind of what we're hearing from the community. So again, I know we're not talking about it now, but just want to show you how we're evolving ourselves.
Thank you, Chief. Valerie.
So one thing, I mean, this is such a moving target, right? There's so much happening in the world and so much happening in the legislature. And I know that several of the bills that were proposed and have passed so far in this legislative session address these issues about training with respect to diversity. And so I would hope that when we talk with greater length about this, that, you know, we're able to address how, you know, maybe the Tigard Police Department is already doing some of these things that are mandated under the new state laws, but also, you know, are there things that are likely to be, you know, revised in light of some of these new requirements? So I would just ask, you know, that we try and keep in mind sort of where we are in the legislative process as well. Just, you know, because there may be things that, you know, the department is doing now that the legislature has said, oh, you have to change that, or things like that.
And we decided not only on when we bring policies to you, we'll bring any legislative proposals that are coming through, or at least so far seem to be passing, because we think that is also relevant, but also kind of meeting the expectation that the council envisioned, is that if there was something that you had a chance to weigh in or be attuned to, we would do that. So that's,
yeah, thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you, Chief. I really appreciate that.
You bet.
Thank you both. All right, Jimmy, I think we are ready for our last agenda item. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Okay, so as we did in our prior session last week, we were able to talk about any discussion that board members have relative to current events and how those events are impacting the Tigard community. So I would open it up to the board members because this is the space for us to talk about those things that are happening inside of our community that we're aware of and that we would like to bring forward to the rest of the board, as well as any community members that are out with.
Lee, I see your hand.
I would just like to say, I think I briefly said something about it a couple meetings ago about the situation going on over here. I would like to thank everybody in the Tigard community, the brass, so to speak, for listening to what we are saying and taking action. Action is happening in a rapid fire type scenario, and we appreciate all of it. So things are finally about to change in this community, which we are all happy about over here. Still got a while to go, but I just wanted to say thank you, Miss Liz Newton. You are so awesome, and Mayor, you guys are just awesome. So I just want to say thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Lee. I'm glad things are getting better. John.
Yeah, I just wanted to share in terms of, I had a an office that was broken into probably midnight last night, between midnight. But I would just want to applaud in terms of the officer that came very fast, called an emergency. They came right over. They made sure that the place is secured and then allowed me to be in there. And I just want to really commend in terms of the Chief and Commander McDonough for training and hiring really great officers out there. So it was a good experience.
Thanks, John. And unfortunately, if you haven't heard, there were about 7 or 8 businesses that were counting, both on Main Street and Highway 99. So we don't have a suspect, at least tonight, but yeah, there were a few businesses. So we don't know what the motive was, but day shift today was still even taking reports. So thank you. I will pass that along, and just know that you are not alone, unfortunately, in that experience.
Sorry to hear that, John. Jimmy.
Yes, I'd just like to do a shout out. Kent Wyatt, who is the city's communications manager, sent out a note the other day asking for individuals who would be interested in participating in his podcast relative to the city of Tigard and the city. I am asking if any of you as PSAB members or as part of your own networks would be interested in connecting with Kent to participate in one of his podcasts. John, I don't know if you've participated with Kent in the past, but I do know that he is really looking for someone who could talk about mental health therapy and mental health resources in the community. So perhaps if you haven't connected with Kent, maybe you or Patty might be interested in connecting with him. I did participate in one of the podcasts a while back, and it's very light. It's very easily formatted, and it's a good way to get information out. John certainly talked about it from the mental health perspective, but also as the incoming chair of the PSAB.
John gave you a thumbs up, so I think you can volunteer him. That's what that means. Jeff, I see your hand.
Yeah, Kent crushes it on Nextdoor if you guys don't see all of his posts. But thinking about ways to get feedback from the community, Nextdoor, as ugly as it can get sometimes in the back and forth, comments are closed on all of the City of Tigard posts. So if we wanted to do some kind of survey work or get feedback on a specific issue, Nextdoor might be a decent way to do it. Take it with a grain of salt, of course, what the response is, but I mean, it's a start.
Yeah, and that's something I can assist with creating a survey monkey or something for this group. And Lee, I see your hand.
Mr. Brown, I would love to be a part of that podcast. So I had gotten involved with Kent a while ago myself, but timing was not of the essence. So I think this would be a good time to discuss what he would like to discuss with me. So yeah, I'm happy to get that done.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you,
I would be happy to send forward your name to him, and then if he has your contact information, then the two of you can get together.
All right, thank you.
And Kim, if I could just ask Danny, I would really like to see you consider doing this. Again, from your role, not so much as you can bring in the Public Safety Advisory Board, but again, as you indicated, kind of new to the community of what you're trying to do on your outreach, the collaboration opportunities, the march, that you're about to do on the 24th. So I don't know if you can get the podcast, but even certainly perspective after the fact. But I think you have a lot to share as a city who's trying to be an anti-racist government, how we partner up, things of that nature. So definitely look to hear your voice in those podcasts.
For sure. Yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't even think about that, to mention some of those things that we're working on right now, but I have been on it before to talk about something different. So, but yeah, you can throw my name in there too. That's fine.
And you were great, Danny. I heard your podcast. You were great. Jimmy, you were great. I listened to as many of them as I can. So you were both great.
Awesome. And Justin.
I just wanted to note that this month of May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And so I just wanted to shout that out, especially since we've talked in the space about how this is also the second largest ethnic demographic in terms of minority communities here in Tigard. And also just note that I appreciate the intersection we have here of committing to creating a public safety program that is inclusive of everyone and makes everyone feel safe in this community, and also that we are committing towards addressing systems of inequity and racism within not only public safety, but in the city government and in our community as a whole.
Thank you, Justin. Michael.
Sorry about that. Elusive unmute button. The City of Tigard's Cityscape newsletter, which is online, has had a pretty decent readership in the past, and I, for many years, did a monthly column And I think that would be a resource that maybe has been underutilized by the group. And I'd be willing to work with anybody or write a column myself on just to keep people updated through that medium on what the group has been doing.
Yeah, I see all kinds of thumbs up. That would be wonderful if you could include an article. Thank you. And Jimmy.
Okay. I am, as we all say, getting ready to leave the chair's position within the PSAB. And one, I want to thank Eduardo and you, Kim, and Tammy, and all the work that you've done in making our group move through pretty darn smoothly. You know, the forming and norming of any group is always a challenge. Bringing together the diversity that we have inside of the group, our different lived experiences, our professional experiences, bringing that together and being able to have good, open, honest, safe conversations has been a valuable experience, at least for me to participate in. You know, I've lived in Tigard for 27 years. I've had some situations with the Tigard Police Department over those years. I have always said that to better understand an organization, it's good to look inside that organization. And on that note, I really want to offer my kudos to Chief and Commander for the work that you all have done to open yourselves up. It is difficult for any organization to turn the mirror onto themselves and say, let me look at myself and see what it is that we can do better. Let me open myself up to, my organization up to potential complaints, because no one really wants to hear, you know, when we are doing bad. We certainly want to hear when we're doing good. But to put yourself in that place says something about leadership. And I'm going to call you Kathy because I care about you so much. Kathy, when I met you and listened to you and spoke to you, it was very clear to me that you were in a leadership position, not just as a hiree, not just as the chief, but because of who you are, the values that you hold, and how you want those values to be generated throughout your organization. That comes from you. And it is so refreshing to see. And so I just want to take this time to really applaud you and applaud your management staff. You all have provided us with an education that will continue as we go forward into what the PSAB will be as it moves forward. And we can't do it without you, and you can't do it without us. So it provides us an opportunity to be equal partners in a change process. And for that, I think it's a benefit to the entire community. And to all the members of the PSAB, I applaud you. You all are wonderful. You bring such wonderful experiences to this group. I could call out individuals of you, but that wouldn't be appropriate. I'm just going to call out all of you. You're all wonderful. You're talented. I read all of your information when the PSAB was forming. I was impressed then. I'm even more impressed as we've gone forward. So thank you all. Certainly thank you for letting me participate in the group as the initial chair. Our next steps are going to be phenomenal, and I just look forward to continuing to be a valued member of the PSAB.
And John?
Yeah, I just say it's going to be a hard shoe to fill as Jimmy's leaving and I'm stepping in. Jimmy, you're so articulate in terms of your comments and your thoughtfulness. And so I honor you and I appreciate all the work that you do. So thank you.
And Danny?
Well, I just wanted to ask if you could give us a little bit of behind the scenes, like behind the cameras. So what's it like to be the chair? What do you do?
Well, let me say this. You know, I spent 42 years of my life, and I'm still a young man, as Tower would say. 42 years of my life in public service, and I always believe that people are successful in public service because of the people that they surround themselves with in support positions. So as you see me as the chair of this particular group, understand that Eduardo and Kim and Tammy have just done great work to make this all successful. I know you may think that I'm sitting up here, you know, saying all these wonderful things on my own, some of which it is, but there's a lot that they have helped provide me with. And I could not have done this work to the level that I've done it without their assistance. And I'm just honored that, you know, I've been able to work with them on that.
Thank you, Jimmy. I think I'll speak for Eduardo and Tammy and I that it's been wonderful to work with you as the chair and really looking forward to working with John and Valerie coming up. And Justin.
I had one small thing that I wanted to mention after listening to Jimmy's eloquent speech about his chairship and also the work that we've been doing. It made me think and feel like this was almost like a graduation ceremony for a bit, which then sparked the thought in my head that I don't know what there is we can do about this. And I know that we have made the program, or sorry, our work plan in tandem with the conversations that are happening at the city level. But something that I just wanted to point out to be mindful of is that I know, for example, Adi will be graduating this year. And I was thinking in terms of the conversation about school resource officers, I have no desire to move that and mess up the plan that we currently have. However, I did want to be mindful of maybe giving our students the opportunity to weigh in potentially before they might end up uprooting their lives to move across the country or pursue other pursuits. And so I just wanted to mention that since I was thinking about the concept of graduation just now.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well taken. I will say we are very open to fluidity on our schedule. As you might have noticed, the mental health response team got bumped up probably 3 months to the next topic, given the conversations that we had in our group recently. So I think as soon as it makes sense at the city level, and hopefully that will be while we still have our wonderful high school students with us, we'll be able to have that school resource conversation. But excellent point, thank you.
Kim, I'm going to mention here that Emilio is a junior, and even though he's the current Tigard Youth Advisor or Tigard Youth City Councilor, we have offered him the position to continue serving on the Public Safety Advisory Board for continuity's sake. So our hope is that Emilio will stay with us into the next year. So just wanted to let you all know that. And I think he would like to do that.
Thank you for the clarification, Liz. All right, Jimmy, I don't see any other hands this evening.
Okay, well, all right. So relative to outstanding issues, I know we're going to have some more, we're going to have additional conversation about the body-worn camera policies. I would ask that all of us take an opportunity to review that policy. There are some points in there that I think will provide for a robust conversation. Certainly, we will be moving forward and talking about mental health and the application of mental health awareness and services inside of the work that we do as PSAB members. So I know Kim and Eduardo and Tammy are going to be on it in terms of getting us ready for that for our next session. At this point, I would like to call for a motion to adjourn if there are no other issues to discuss.
We have one last hand from the chief.
Oh,
sorry. Actually, Jimmy, thank you for bringing that up. I think it's already, you guys have discussed it. It might have been the last meeting when I wasn't there. But if you have questions as you're reading the policies or any moving forward, you can certainly ask them that night. But if you think that there is, prepping us for what comes to mind, for ease, if you send them all to Eduardo, he'll send them to us. I think that process is already in place, but just want to reiterate, you can certainly send your questions early enough so we can get a kind of a flow of what questions you might have in anticipation of the next coming meeting.
great.
Thank you, Chief. All right, now there are no more hands, Jimmy.
Okay. Yes, I would entertain a motion to adjourn meeting number 10 of the Public Safety Advisory Board.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we will now adjourn. I see no hands relative to any other issues. So folks, go out and enjoy the rest of this beautiful evening. Thank you all for giving the City of Tigard and its police department your discretionary time. And again, it has been an honor and a pleasure to have been the chair up through this point, and I look forward to continuing to work with John and Miss Valerie. And everybody have a good evening.
Thank you all. Good night.
Night.